And welcome to this webinar. We're really excited to be joining the College of Law's Careers Academy Week. This is the first time we've collaborated with the College of Law in this way. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself and my colleague Scarlett. We don't have Jane with us today, who I appreciate was one of the speakers. But just to say that my name's Alice Payne. I'm the Head of Business Development and Marketing at the College of Legal Practice. Scarlett, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. My name is Scarlett McGinley Hughes and I'm the Student Services Manager at the College of Legal Practice.
So today we're going to take you through the SQE, which is a new route to qualify as a solicitor in England and Wales. And the reason why we've joined today as the College of Legal Practice is part of the College of Law group, and I will talk a little bit about that in a moment. We do have a chat bar if anyone wants to ask any questions. We'll pick them up as we go along. If we don't get through the questions, we will send you as much information as we can, and we're happy to help after this webinar as well. So we'll get started. So who is the College of Legal Practice? So we are new. We are an accredited law school based in the UK. Whilst we've come to the UK quite recently, as we're part of the College of Law group, essentially as part of the group, we've been around for many, many years. What are we aiming to achieve? What are we striving for as an organisation? So for us, it's incredibly important that we help increase access to our profession over here in England and Wales. And something we were really excited about was the introduction of the Solicitors Qualifying Examination. That's really what drove us to join the UK market. Something that we're really passionate around that and how we see that happening is really facilitating individual support for all our students. It's very much not focused on a classroom model, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. But for us, what we've recognised and we think is important for our students is a focus on individual supervision, individual support and personalised learning journeys. So the College of Legal Practice is very keen on that. Our first set of courses that we have launched and we've been running since last year, they are all for aspiring solicitors. So there are various courses around transactional skills, business skills, and the preparation obviously for the SQE. We're also fortunate enough to be running master's programme, and you can study for the SQE through a whole master's in legal practice should you wish. So there's a whole range of programmes designed for the aspiring solicitor. But in the future, just like the College of Law, we are looking at programmes for qualified solicitors and more experienced legal professionals. And we'll also be looking at leadership and management professionals and how we can help them with their career journeys. So the intention is very much to look at how the College of Law group supports solicitors and lawyers all the way through their career journey, and we're very much doing the same thing as that. So that's the College of Legal Practice, and what I'm going to take you through today, I'm just going to take you through the overall route to qualification. It is very different from the previous route. If you've ever been interested in becoming a solicitor in England and Wales, we're going to look a little bit at qualifying work experience, which is a key component and very different to the current training contract. Go into the assessments in a little bit more detail, and then just look a little bit at our preparation courses, just so you can see if you were to study with the College of Legal Practice, what you'd be expecting. And there are some opportunities with the SQE that don't come through quite as often as they would with the LPC. So just looking at the SQE route to qualification. So this is brand new. It's replacing something called the legal practice course, if anyone's familiar with that, which was the LPC route. So the LPC route, the way that worked is there was a very strict, rigid structure. So there was an LPC, which was a training course, very much like PLT in some respects, where you studied for a year or 2 years. And then after that, you needed to secure a training contract with an employer. So you needed an employer to sponsor your period of recognised training. And it was all dependent on securing that training contract with an employer as to whether you could become a solicitor. You could not become a solicitor without that training contract. And your career was not in your own hands. So that's the LPC route. And the LPC route is still available, but there are certain criteria that you need to have already passed or already be studying to do the LPC route now. For foreign qualified lawyers, if there are any qualified lawyers on the call, I will come back to this in a little bit more detail, but there was a scheme called the Qualified Lawyers Transfer Scheme, And that qualified lawyers transfer scheme was a way of facilitating qualified lawyers in other jurisdictions being able to qualify in England and Wales. That's also finished now. Now it's just the SQE. So there were a number of different routes, but the SQE is now the one for all the students to be taking, unless you have actually started some of the law degrees and the diplomas based in the UK. So what is the SQE? There's 4 components here, and we've borrowed this from the Solicitors Regulation Authority. The Solicitors Regulation Authority is the regulator for all solicitors in England and Wales, and they're the ones that have set this exam, which is a centralised examination. So there are 4 components, as you can see on the slide. The first one is a degree or equivalent. Now, in the old structure, you had to have a qualifying law degree or a formal diploma that was a conversion course. That's now gone. You just need a law degree. Now, if you haven't got, you just need a undergraduate degree or equivalent. And it doesn't have to be in law, it can be in any subject. And when I say equivalent, there's an equivalence there for undergraduate degrees from all over the world as well. And we just need to make sure it's comparable to a degree over here in the UK. Secondly, there's SQE, and SQE is split into SQE1 and SQE2, and that's very different from the LPC, which was one set of training with a small course whilst you're in your training contract. This is very much 2 separate exams, SQE1 and SQE2, and I'll come on to those and the difference between those. Qualifying work experience. So every, route to become a solicitor or a lawyer needs a period of recognised training. And this is called qualifying work experience now, and it's much, much more flexible than the training contract. So we'll look a little bit at that later. And then suitability requirements, again, like many other routes to qualification, they will just assess your character and suitability to become a solicitor. So that's the SQE route. There are 4 components to becoming a solicitor. So let's just look a little bit at the SQE itself. So the Solicitors Qualifying Examination. So the LPC route, which many of you may not know either, but just in case you were familiar with it, was run by any training provider who decided that they wanted to be accredited and to run that as a qualifying set of training. This is really, really different because it's run essentially by the regulator. It's one set of centralised exams. So the SRA set the curriculum, the specification, and they've contracted with one central organisation, Kaplan, and Kaplan run the exams. The good news is for people based all across the world is that for most components of the exam, you can actually take it all across the world. There is one element though, which is the oral assessment that you have to actually come to England and Wales to take. So the written assessments, there are 2 types, and we'll go through some of them with you, but the written assessments can be taken at test centres. Over in the UK, the test centres are the ones that we do our driving test in, so they're online test centres, but they're all over the UK, they're all over the world, and we've already had students from lots of different places in the world take those, so you don't have to travel anywhere to take that exam. SQE2 actually has 2 components, written and oral, and those oral exams for the moment they are in England, Manchester and Cardiff, but the SRA recognise that in the future that they need to change that to move to that being global, but at the moment our students who have been based elsewhere have had to come in for SQE2 oral. So they're an exam fee payable to Kaplan. So I suppose that's the other separate thing about this is previously you may pay the provider for your training and also essentially your assessment to qualify. Over here now you have to pay Kaplan, which is run by the SRA, and you'll have to pay them for the actual exam fees. And then if you decide to do any preparation courses, and that's what the College of Legal Practice provide, then you do fund the course fees separately from the exam fees. So what is the SQE? So SQE1 assessment and SQE2. So SQE1 is very much testing your legal knowledge, and that's legal knowledge around the law of England and Wales. There are 13 practice areas, and I'll show you those in a moment. So it's a really, really wide range. And how do they test them? They test them through an incredible number of multiple choice questions. But it's all about testing your knowledge of the law of England and Wales. They have 10 hours of examination split over 2 days. in basically 2 examinations per day. So you have a 2.5-hour exam, you have a break, 2.5-hour exam, and then you go on to another day. It tends to be about 3 days apart, where again, similar format, you study for the next set of practice areas, you have an exam, break, exam. And those exam fees are just there on the slide. And then SQE2, so SQE2, as I've said, a little bit more complicated. They test some written legal skills and then they test oral legal skills. So this is meant to be the skills component. And I think one of the things that's a little bit different about this compared to a training at the LPC level is they're really looking at skills that you've got to become a day one solicitor. So what they're looking for is you've already acquired those skills to become a day one solicitor. So a lot of firms and organizations are recommending that if you've already got that work experience, or you've already been in legal practice, then that will really help you develop and hone those skills. You'll be really well placed to help take the SQE2. So there's oral skills and written skills, and I'll go through those in a bit more detail, and lots of different stations where people move around to do a written test and then they do an oral test, and that's spread out over a little bit longer period of time, where you do your written exams in a couple of days and then you do your oral exams. And then there's an exam fee there as well, in English pounds, so apologies for that. But that's the SQE. And then just looking at the subjects covered in the SQE. Now, this is something, I guess, for you to think about. You may be based in Australia or New Zealand, but you may have some knowledge of English and Welsh law if you're working for an international firm or international practice. But what you really need to work through if you're thinking of doing the SQE is how familiar are you with these different topics in the context of the English and Welsh legal system. So as you can see, SQE1 has 13 different areas that you look at through SQE1. And what you'll find is they're all mixed up in the exam. So you can't study one and then forget about it. It's not like an LPC where you can take a particular module, you get tested on that module, then you move to the next one. For these exams, you're really having to learn and understand and know that all those legal principles across all those areas all at the same time. And then SQE2, it goes a little bit more into specific practice areas. You need to know and remember your knowledge in those. And then you're tested in a skill in the context of those areas. So, for example, client interviewing, you might be tested and you're given a particular task, and it will be in one of those practice areas along the right-hand side. So it's a little bit more specific, but you still need to know your legal knowledge. So before we look at the SQE assessments in a little bit more detail, everyone's always very interested in qualifying work experience and whether their particular work experience counts as qualifying work experience. So what is it? It's not a new thing for qualification. It's a period of practical work experience. And I suppose the key thing to assess whether the work experience you might be getting is part of that and can count towards that is whether it develops part of the solicitor's statement of competence. So what you really need is to think about whether the competencies that the SRA have defined to become a solicitor meet, and they're very, very wide ranging, meet what work that you are doing. So it's a period of 2-year training. So I think Scarlett's just going to pop on the chat, Scarlett, the statement of solicitor's competence. It's very, very broad what counts for qualifying work experience. It's very, very flexible. So, for example, if you do work experience in a law clinic, the chances are that will be developing some of the statement, the solicitor's competencies. So that will work. Any kind of work experience, whether it's paid or not, if it's in the legal sector and you're doing some drafting, writing, client discussion, communication, many of all the different types of legal work experience you're doing will count, we think, to qualifying work experience. And we do have a whole list of those, actually, a little bit more detail on our website if you're interested. So the other key thing about qualifying work experience is whilst it's over 2-year period, which was the same as the training contract, it doesn't have to be in one organisation, and it can be in up to 4 organizations. And that's really fantastic for people who don't get that long-term, secure kind of permanent employment contract. There are organizations at the moment who are helping students over here in the UK get particular contracts for, 6 months or 12 months, and that can all count as your qualifying work experience. You can do it over a series of 4 different organizations and employers. The last thing, which is really important, is it's not something that you need to start before you do your SQE. So the order at which you do SQE and qualifying work experience is completely different from the old regime of the LPC and the training contract. So the order at which you can do it, you could have completely completed your qualifying work experience before you've even started the SQE examinations. You could decide to do SQE 1, and then you could get your qualifying work experience and then do SQE 2. You could do it half between. I mean, really, the idea is that as you are learning, you can start working, you can do them alongside each other. It's incredibly flexible as to when you can start it, which is great news for lots and lots of students, because actually, quite honestly, they've already starting to get their qualifying work experience, even at university or in the summer, just to gain that practical work experience. So that's really, really positive. And as you can see, you can take it anywhere in the world. Something that you might be wondering is, how do you actually get that signed off? How do you actually confirm that your qualifying work experience is what the Solicitors Regulation Authority say it is, and how do you submit it? Well, if you don't have a solicitor in your organisation, all you need to do is have somebody who has direct knowledge of your work, and you just need to find a solicitor who can speak to your supervisor, who's direct knowledge of your work, and that supervisor will help you sign that off and confirm that. That is part of their duty as a solicitor. So there are lots and lots of different ways you can get your qualifying work experience. It's designed to be incredibly flexible. As I say, you can bank it, you can count as voluntary work, and you can take it anywhere in the world. You don't have to come to England and Wales to do that. Just moving through, foreign qualified lawyers. I don't know what stage you are in your career. I don't know if you're considering to come over here after your undergraduate degree, and you would like to be based here for a while, or whether you're actually already qualified over in Australia or New Zealand. But whatever stage you are at, if you are a qualified lawyer in any jurisdiction, that does mean you don't need to complete your qualifying work experience. You would just need to complete SQE 1 and SQE 2. Now, if you're actually a solicitor or barrister in New Zealand, you can actually apply for an individual exemption around SQE 2. We haven't got that confirmed yet for Australian lawyers, but it is worth keeping an eye on it, because what is happening is the SRA are more and more looking at different jurisdictions, and they're assessing the similarities between the law over here and the law in Australia and the qualification. And there may be more exemptions, and I'm sure there will be coming through. So it may be that you can get an exemption for SQE 2. The last thing to say is, if you've got a lot of very particular individual experience, particularly that is similar to those areas that are studying in SQE, you may be able to apply for individual exemptions. They aren't doing a lot of these, and it's unclear how many are successful. But it is worth thinking about, particularly if you're working in a firm that does study, that is based around the English legal system, and you're working internationally with clients that very much focus on the law of England and Wales. So just to say, if you're already qualified, there is a shorter route to qualification in the UK. So I'm just going to look a little bit at the SQE assessment. So SQE 1. So just going into this in a little bit more detail. So 360 multiple choice questions, about 100 seconds to answer each one. Run by Kaplan, as I said, lots of locations in England and Wales and around the world. And they run every 6 months. So again, something just a little bit more flexible is the frequency of the exam dates. So every 6 months you can take SQE 1. SQE 2, SQE 1, just looking at the way in which it's actually designed and what people are answering. So multiple choice questions, it's all multiple choice. Now, a lot of people, I think, when this was introduced, thought, oh, multiple choice questions are going to be incredibly easy. This is not a true test of my legal knowledge. I think the more that this has come through and the more that our students have said, is you recognize this is not an easy exam. It's really intensive, actually. So to sit there for 2.5 hours, that's just a quarter of the exams overall. to answer so many multiple choice questions so quickly, you really need to have all the legal principles at your fingertips across all those different areas. I think the other thing about the multiple choice questions is they are nearly all plausible, not all of them, but you can't very easily pick out the incorrect answers, that it's the best possible answer. So some of them might be correct, but they may not be the best answer. And just that little bit of complexity makes it more challenging to think about. The good news is it focuses more on legal principle. It's closed book, you don't have anything with you, so you have to have it in your head. But what it does do is it doesn't expect you to have references, statutory references or case law references. So you don't need to learn things like that. It's very much about understanding the legal principle. And what we do actually is we provide a manual that gives you all the legal knowledge that you need and lots of practice of lots of questions. So you're fully prepared for the exam. So just to give you an example of a question. So this question, you get a stem, you get quite a long stem of the question. And then a very specific kind of question at the bottom. So this stem, you can have a read, if any of you are familiar with it, you can have a go at thinking about what it might be. You've got to pick out the relevant parts. You've got to identify the type of law that it refers to. And you've really got to think about, right, what am I looking for here? And then you move through and as many of you will be familiar with our learning portal Canvas, you'll know how well that it could work for this. So if any of you are already studying with the college, there are an awful lot of these multiple choice questions that we've been able to set up for nearly 2,000 for you to practice. But as you can see, there are 5 answers, and then this very best possible answer is the one that you have to pick, which in this case is D. So that's SQE 1, and that's the kind of approach which is so different from the assessments in the LPC or the legal practice course, and probably different from assessments that you've experienced as well. So just a little bit about us and our course. So lots of providers can now prepare anyone for the SQE. You could even decide to take it without a preparation course. If you feel incredibly comfortable and secure in your legal knowledge, then you don't have to take a course. It is all very much optional. You can apply for the exam separately. So looking at this course, we provide a series of courses, full-time and part-time, depending on your circumstances. We'd highly recommend if anyone is actually working at the same time as studying that they take a part-time course. It's incredibly demanding. It's not in the nicest possible way like most undergraduate degrees. It's very intensive. And when we say it's 30 hours a week or 20 hours a week, it really is. And the good news is it's really flexible. So you can study for the vast majority of time whenever you like across the week, as long as you hit your weekly deadlines. But there are a few moments in the week where you have a live supervision, which is a one-to-one supervision with your supervisor, or you have a surgery. So you can see the kind of things on this slide that we offer. It's all fully virtual, as you might expect from the College of Law group. You do have town halls with your cohorts, with your module leader, and they're really, really helpful because a lot of this is learning about the legal knowledge, but actually it's also about learning about how to answer the assessments, how to prepare yourself for the multiple choice questions. So you do have to think about the technique that you want to use. There are different tactics that students have shared with us about how they get through the exams as well. So a lot of this is about getting your head ready for that assessment, as well as learning the legal knowledge. I've mentioned the individual one-to-one support. We're really, really proud of that, and we feel that that really helps our accessibility for everybody. Your personal tutor and your supervisor are incredibly important, and you have that individual relationship with them, and you meet them. If it's a full-time course, you'll meet them every week, a little bit less often if it's a part-time course. And to help you along the way, we give you early access to materials as well. And the cost of the course is 1,800 British pounds. So that's the SQE1 prep. Just to say, if the law of England and Wales is completely new to you, what you might want to think about is whether you could go straight into a preparation course for SQE1. You have to get very familiar with 13 areas of law. It may be, given your experience or given your training, that you feel comfortable going straight into the preparation course, but we would really recommend, if this is all brand new to you, to think about essentially a conversion which gives you some foundations in the law of England and Wales. And that would take about 20 weeks full time, or you can study it at part time. And that really sets you up in the same way that an undergraduate law degree would set you up in the UK. If you had studied an undergraduate law degree over here, these are the foundation subjects that you would have studied. So we're offering this course from October, but it's worth thinking about those subject areas that I spoke about earlier, and just whether actually you feel we can go straight into that preparation course and learn the context of the England and Wales law, or whether actually you feel like you do want to do a conversion course, get the foundations under your belt as in exactly the same way had you studied here an undergraduate law degree, and then you move into your preparation course. So that would be our recommendation. But I think what we know, I'm sure what Scarlett would say, is that actually every person's situation and their training and their experience is different. So if you're at all unsure and you feel like, you know, one pathway doesn't work for you, or you're not sure which course is right, then we'd really recommend that you give us a shout, and we can talk through that with you. Let me pause, Scarlett, for any questions at the moment. Is there anything that that we would want to talk through right now?
There are no questions in the chat bar, Alice, but there is one question from Sarah about foreign qualified lawyers. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer it, but it is, for foreign qualified lawyers, does that mean unrestricted practice certificate or just admission to the relevant Supreme Court?
Yeah, so I don't know the specifics about the definition of a qualified lawyer in the jurisdiction in Australia, or the jurisdictions, I should say, in Australia. So I think that for that, we probably would need to look at the SRA's website and have a look through what their definition is. I think they probably would refer to whatever your definition is of your authority in your jurisdiction as a qualified lawyer, but we can definitely have a little look into that and see whether we can find a more specific definition, particularly for the different jurisdictions, because I know you do state qualification as well over in Australia, so I will have a look for that. The qualifying work experience, though, whether you're considered a foreign qualified lawyer or not, the chances are, if you actually have been working for a certain period of time anyway, you will have that qualifying work experience. So even if you're not officially considered that qualified lawyer, that work experience, if you've been building up your legal practice work, you might have that anyway. But yeah, we can actually look into that one a little bit more and send that round. So if there are any other specific circumstances on that, you can feel free to pop them in the chat bar, and we'll have a little look into it, because I'm sure we'll get questions like that in the future as well. So moving on to SQE2. So SQE2, so the first thing to say is you have to pass SQE1 before you take SQE2. You can't actually even register for SQE2 on Kaplan's website until you've passed SQE1. So they have made that the only restrictive, I suppose, element of the timing of this route to qualification. The reason why I guess they want to do that is they want to make sure that you're really secure in your legal knowledge before they test your legal skills in the context of certain practice areas. And what that does mean is you can take it step by step, though. So you don't need to run them very quickly to a lot of people try and take SQE1 and then SQE2 straight away, and that's absolutely fine. In fact, some firms are saying that they want their trainees to do that. But you can take SQE1, you can sign up, you can see how that goes, because I think until you've experienced that, you don't know quite how you're going to be and how easy you're going to find it, or whether you need to retake it. The pass rate is just over 50%. So there will be some people who don't pass SQE1 who might want to resit it, and you can resit it up to 3 times if you don't pass first time. So once you've taken SQE1, you can decide how quickly you want to take SQE2 in the same kind of way. If you're experienced in legal practice, you might find this less arduous than SQE1. The only thing is it's still closed book assessments. You still need to have the legal knowledge in your head. You can't refer to any textbooks, you can't have any notes with you, so you do need to keep that legal knowledge really up to date for this one. But you're being tested on skills, and these skills are the kind of skills that you would expect for a solicitor. So you've got 6 written and oral skills. I think I've gone through most of this. I suppose the online and face-to-face assessment, that's a little bit different. So you have your online written assessments where you'll be given a task. So legal writing, you'll be given a task, you'll be asked to draft an email to a client. And then you'll have these oral assessments. So I spoke about these oral ones, and this is where you actually go into a room in the same way you probably do over in your training, and you have to go into a room and you have to interview a client. So you'll get some information beforehand, and then you have to write up, for example, that interview at the end and that attendance note. So there are different oral skills that you go through, and that's planned. And I guess what we try and do with our students to help you practice those and get a lot of feedback from the supervisors in the courses. So by the time that you go into those assessments, which do feel quite different when you're all sitting in a room by yourself, and then you're taken one-to-one and you kind of knock on the door and you're given a kind of panel of people that you have to sit in and kind of run that assessment. We give you as much practice as we possibly can for you on that, so you feel really confident that you can do it. So SQE, the other thing to say about SQE2 actually, is that it is run more frequently than SQE1. So SQE1 run every 6 months. But SQE2 actually by 2024 will be every 3 months. So I think one of the things that we would say to people is you don't need to have this all mapped out by dates from the beginning. You don't have to have decided exactly which assessment that you want to take. Now, I appreciate if you are lucky enough to have an employer funding you, or if you want to qualify quickly because you've obviously got that eye on a particular role or a particular career move, then yes, you can SQE1 and very quickly move to SQE2. And we do have some students who hopefully will be solicitors in August, which is really exciting. I say in August, we're in August. In 3 weeks' time, we do have some students who will have passed SQE1 and hopefully SQE2 and will already have become a solicitor if they've got their qualifying work experience. But it happens every 3 months, so you don't need to rush. You know, there will be lots and multiple SQE2 assessments, and that's the idea, is they expect people to be working by this point in time, working in legal services, and actually you study for the exams when you can and you take the exams when you can. So just to give you an example, so this is a written assessment, and something I would recommend if you're really trying to get to grips with these assessments is there are some sample environments on the SRA's website, and you can just go on and you can see exactly what you would see on your computer screen when you go into the assessment centre, which our students have found incredibly helpful. And those were some of the tips that they've suggested that you should take time to look at. Is you can go in, you can see this, and you can think, okay, that's exactly what I'm going to see in the exam. The students that took SQE1 and SQE2 actually from the college, it was really helpful that they fed back to us that our practice assessments were actually really similar to this as well. So if you do decide to study with us, you will get a lot of examples that are very much like this, that you can feel confident that you've practiced before you go into the exam. So this assessment here, just to look at this, obviously you've got a note to the candidate, you've got an email, and then you've got some context around meetings and background information, and then you've got to draft that candidate email. That's the written task. And then this is an oral assessment. So they actually are assessing writing as well here. So they've combined the oral skill of interviewing with the written skill of writing out the attendance note. So as you can see, it's probably quite small on the screen, but there's an email to candidate over on the right, and you read through the email, you're given a bit of background information, and then you go in and then you have to, you do get to prepare, you get to take notes whilst you're preparing, and then you go in and then you interview your client. And then after that, once you've done that, you have to come back out, reflect on what you've done, and then write up the note accurately, and you're tested on those skills. So that's an example of SQE2. So hopefully that's given you a bit of flavour of what you're going to experience. So to help you prepare for that, in some respects, it's quite a similar model to SQE1. We very much have a one-to-one supervision model. You'll get a guide. The guide will give you all the detail around the skills. And again, if you're familiar with the College of Law's courses, there are lots and lots of resources. There's lots of videos, there's lots of demonstrations, and lots of practice. And the thing that we again try and do is give you lots of individual feedback, so you feel really, really confident that you can go through to the SQE2 assessment. Again, we've got full-time and part-time courses. Part-time courses proving really popular for people who are already working rather than the full-time courses. So very similar style of preparation. to the SQE 1 preparation course. So just stepping back and thinking about the opportunities with the SQE as opposed to the legal practice course. So some of you possibly may have thought, oh no, I can't possibly qualify over in England and Wales. Well, hopefully the SQE will have really helped that become a possibility for you, and it's a lot more flexible. So there's that no dependency on a training contract. So you don't need an employer involved. Obviously, that might mean you're self-funding it, which brings its other challenges. If you can get an employer to fund part of your assessment or part of your training costs, I mean, obviously that's fantastic, and that will help you. Take it step by step, as I've said. You could take SQE1 very quickly, and then that will help you get paralegal work or work experience. If you're struggling to get work experience after your undergraduate degree, or you're looking to think, how do I actually break into the legal sector? One of the ways some people are going to use the SQE is take SQE1 quickly, and then if they can't, go straight onto SQE2, or they can't get a training contract, or they can't get legal experience. That SQE1, passing that SQE1 will help them break into the legal sector for the first time. As I've said, flexibility on QWE, it can be taken anywhere in the world. If you don't have a solicitor in your organization, that doesn't matter. You can still find that person who can help sign off your QWE as long as they know enough about your work, which is great. Lots of different training options. The costs can be less. They're not necessarily, it all depends on the provider that you use. But the idea is that you could qualify, and it costs you a lot less money than it did the old route qualification over in the UK. The firms are now moving to SQE. If you're interested in what's happening over here, obviously the legal sector, it is quite conservative. I'm sure it's no different over in Australia. And firms have been watching and looking, and there have been some pioneering firms that have already moved to SQE. There have been quite a lot of others that are waiting to see, and they're still using the LPC route to training, to qualification, but that is going to change, and that is changing quite quickly. So we think this year will be the year in which most of the firms will start moving over and start promoting SQE. So there will be training contracts available for people who want to do training contracts and able to secure a training contract focused on the SQE route. But we do think at the moment that will take another year, another 2 years to go through. And then by that point, everyone will be doing the SQE, and the LPC route will be no longer a priority. We are quite new in the UK, but we already have got quite a few partnerships with different firms. Not too many possibly international names, but some that you'll probably recognise. Taking different approaches actually to the SQE. Reed Smith were a real pioneer of the SQE route right from the very beginning. Brian Cave, Leighton Paisner, again, BCLP, they've already started their trainees, just starting to go through onto SQE now. AccuTrainee, if any of you are looking to get contractual work and coming over to the UK, AccuTrainee are a really fantastic organisation that can get you contracts, short-term contracts of employment that will help with your qualifying work experience. But they also then do bring on certain groups of participants as trainees as well. So AccuTrainee are a different type of employer that essentially will contract with other organisations for you to get that work experience. And Marks and Spencers, we're really pleased to have one of their paralegals on our course. I think they've learning a lot. They're actually doing the masters, the LLM in legal practice. So they've just, that particular student's just finished their SQE1 assessment, and now they're moving on to study a particular practice area. They're looking at IP, I think, in employment law, and they're really trying to understand the particular practice area. And they're doing that part-time. They're doing that alongside their work as a kind of transactional skills module in their master's course. So lots of examples. Just some considerations for working legal professionals. You may not be working. You can, of course, take all of this full-time and study it full-time. But as organisations, College of Law and Legal Practice are very much focusing around the career progression of working legal professionals, very practical training. Just some things for you to think about. The first thing that we would always ask people to think about is how much time do you really have to study alongside your work and personal commitments, because I think even the students who did the courses full-time or given full study leave have found it quite an intensive preparation course for SQE1. and SQE2. So we would really urge you to have a think, ask us about the course structure if you've got any more information that you're interested in to understand how is this course going to work, how can I fit it alongside my either caring commitments or my work commitments. Do have a think about that. Obviously, there's the funding for both the training and the assessments, and the study leave that you might want for the assessments as well. It's not all given to you as a package. So it's really for you to think about, where do I want to take my study leave? How do I want to earn while I'm learning? How can I study while I'm working? When exactly are the assessments? What study leave do I need? Where do I need to take them? Do I need to, book accommodation and training? And we'll support you across that whole journey. But it is very much one that you need to put together yourself with our support and decide the right journey through those preparation courses and those assessments for you, your circumstances as well. I've spoken quite a lot about QWE, so you do need to think about how you get it signed off. If you are thinking about doing this route to qualification, we recommend using the training template on the SRO's website just to start keeping track of your qualifying work experience, and also have some early conversations with your employer at the moment. If you think you're gaining qualifying work experience at the moment, do have a chat with them now, because actually, if they know that you're going to go and ask them to confirm it and sign it off down the line, it's much, much easier to have that conversation when you've finished your contract or your placement with them, or the 2 years, if you've already had that conversation at the beginning. And obviously this route is new for everyone, so everyone's learning about it. And we are getting students that are coming back to us and saying, actually, I'm not sure if my organisation is happy to sign this off, and we're kind of guiding them along the way, because they're not familiar with the way in which the qualifying work experience is being confirmed and signed off. They're not confirming the quality of your work, they're confirming that you've completed it. So it is quite different. And again, there's various information about qualifying work experience and signing it off on our website. We've got a QWE hub, and lots of information in there that will help guide you along the way around that one. I suppose the last thing to say is, what kind of newly qualified lawyer do you want to be? Because whilst there's all this flexibility, and a lot of people say, I just want to qualify quickly, everything that you do in your qualifying period builds up to that career that you want to have as an NQ solicitor. So if you have an eye on that, think about that firm, that organisation, that sector that you really want to work in, and the qualifying work experience. You might get 2 years qualifying work experience in all sorts of practice areas, but actually, is it helping you in your career progression to get that job that you want at the end of it? So we recognise that the flexibility brings a lot of opportunity for people to qualify more quickly, to qualify more easily. But do you have the tools and the skills and experience through that qualifying work experience and that period to actually get that job that you're really, really passionate about? So we would always ask you to think about, yes, the SQE route gets you to qualification, but for your career ambitions, you might feel you need more transactional skills training. You might want work experience in a very particular area you really care about. It is more than ticking the boxes on the qualification route, because otherwise you'll get to the point where you will be that qualified solicitor, but you won't be able to get that role that recognises you as that qualified solicitor. So just, again, something to consider about your career opportunities, and just having that eye on where you want to get to, not just the qualification in itself. So in terms of the college, I mean, I've talked a little bit about why we think that you should study with us. There's just a few things on here about us and how the learning model has developed, and why we believe that we help you pass the SQE, and we'll be with you across that whole SQE journey. So I've talked a little bit about the one-to-one supervision and support. Our students, they keep feeding back how brilliant the supervisors are, which is so great to hear. We've got really high levels of satisfaction from our students so far, which is brilliant. Very flexible and accessible. So again, you can study at very different times of the day, evening, weekends, as long as you keep to your weekly timetable and you do the learning you need to do each week. It's pretty flexible. You can get recordings if you can't attend surgeries and town halls, for example, but you do need to meet with your supervisor. That's the one thing that you have to do. We've got quite a few moments in time where we've thought about how can we help students understand the SQE and pass it and get ready for it. So one of them right at the beginning is giving you the information as early as possible, the knowledge you need to learn. So we will send that to you really early on now, before the course starts, to help you start learning it and thinking about it. And then the other key moment in time is we've created this SQE Ready review, where we realize when you start the course, you just don't know how you're going to perform in this course because it's very different. But there's a moment in time before you could, and before the booking window closes, where you could change your assessment if you feel you're not ready. And the supervisor will spend a bit of time with you to reflect on your performance and just think, actually, do you think you'll have a really good likelihood of passing this assessment? Because it is expensive and you will have study leave and other things to think about. The last thing you want to do is put yourself up for an assessment where you feel you're not ready. So again, that individual supervisor will guide you through and really advise you on whether they think, based on your performance in our assessments, that you're ready to take the SQE, because we recognize that this is something, you know, will progress your career. It's not a kind of sprint to the finish line to take the first possible opportunity to take it. Fully happy to help you as well with your first retake if you don't pass, and if you don't pass our assessments internally, we'll also offer you a retake for ours as well. So a lot of support along the way, and then other things as you might expect. I know we're a virtual community, but you still will get student benefits. You do get some free counselling support and wellbeing package that's really important to us as well. So those are just some of the reasons why we feel like it's great to study for the SQE with us, and the students are saying at the moment some very positive things about us. We did have about 80 students take the SQE1 in July, and they've just finished, so we've got quite a lot of students who studied with us over the last year now, which is great, and we're learning an awful lot around the SQE from them. So there's a little bit more around our student experience. Again, there's a bit more feedback. I won't run through it. You can see some of the quotes on there, and some of the feedback that we're getting. It's really important to us that we're listening to our students, and we have made quite a lot of improvements in both courses since the brilliantly fantastic first cohorts who were brave enough to study with us in our first year. But we're feeling quite experienced and quite knowledgeable now about the SQE. So that's the end of the particular webinar presentation. Scarlett, is there anything else that we can help people with in terms of questions?
Questions just come through from Matthew about whether the course for the SQE can be taken entirely remotely or virtually. I was just typing out an answer, but I don't know if you want to talk through that, Alice, just to clarify.
Yeah, so we're completely virtual. We don't have a campus at all. Totally virtual, so you can take it from anywhere in the world. Bear in mind, obviously, some of the time zones differences, but as I said, if you can't attend some of the live sessions, they are all recorded, and our supervisors will be flexible to have supervisions with you at a time that suits them and suits you. I think this time in the morning for us, and the evening for you, is probably the best time for those. But no, it's completely virtual. For those of you who are familiar with the College of Law's learning portal, it's the same learning portal, the same approach, and the vast majority of the learning you can study at a time that suits you. But no, we don't have an office either. Often many people ask us where our office is. We have no office and we have no campus, and so far that's working really well for the students, and well for us, because it does mean it's accessible for everyone. Is that it, Scarlett?
Yep, no other questions in the Q&A or chat. Thanks, Alice. Okay,
no worries. So I think Scarlett has popped on there our details, and there's lots and lots of links to various resources. I think the two main places to go, if you pop to our website, there's lots of things on there, and then the SRA's website has a lot around the SQE. There's probably a lot for you to think about. So on the screen, there's just a couple of things that you might want to consider. If you are at that point where you're thinking about your circumstances, Scarlett and her team are really happy for you to book a call with them, or you can email them or phone them as per the information on the chat. There's a couple of demos, and I think demos just bring courses to life sometimes. So there's a preparation SQE1, SQE2 prep demos on our website. You can just take a look at those and see what the courses are like. You can see the practice materials. You can see some of the activities that we do. So you're very welcome to take a look at those. And then we have got some college events. Now I've realized that they are all pretty much based bang in the middle of the UK day. So you may struggle to get to some of these if you are based over in Australia and New Zealand, but we can definitely give you recordings on all of those. If there is interest and you are, and there's a number of people who would like us to run one at a time that suits you, we'd be really happy to do that. So just get in touch with us and we'll be very happy to run something at a better time. But there are 3 events there. There's one focusing on SQE1, really thinking about which course works best for you. That will also cover the master's course. I haven't talked too much about that, but if you want to do a full foundation in law across lots of other areas, transactional skills and business skills, then the master's is something to consider. The SQE2 course, a little bit more focus on that. And again, both of those, you'll meet the academic team and you can ask them any questions. And then the last one is supporting non-law graduates. So actually that webinar in September, that's all will cover the Graduate Foundation in Law programme that I mentioned, which gives you those foundations of the law of England and Wales in a little bit more detail. We also have a LinkedIn group for anyone who's interested in studying SQE, and some of our students are on there who've just done SQE1 and SQE2, and they're really happy to answer any questions from anyone who's interested. So yeah, I think that's everything from us. So thank you so much for joining us. I think we are able to send you some of these links on an email afterwards alongside. I'm sure you'll get the recording and the slides in due course. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your interest. And we look forward to hearing from you if you'd like to find out more. Thank you.